Okay, welcome back. In the previous video we looked at the first phase of the recommended migration strategy for older releases of AIX in Power Virtual Server environments. We upgraded the operating system to a supported version using NIM-ADM. In the next video, in this one, we're going to look at how to complete the second phase by migrating that virtual machine onto newer IBM hardware within the PowerVS environment. We're going to follow the approach described in the support article by capturing the virtual machine, deploying it onto newer hardware, and then validating that everything is working as expected. So in this case, we're going to be taking this CG61 LPAR, which you can see here we have verified that it's running and is active. And you'll notice that it's now active instead of showing in a warning state, and that's because we've migrated it to a version of AIX that is supported within PowerVS. So we're going to capture this VM and then, using that captured image, deploy it to new hardware within PowerVS. Before creating a VM image, it's worth taking a few minutes to confirm the system is healthy. We can quickly check the operating system level, verify that the applications are running, confirm networking is good, and make sure there aren't any unexpected errors before creating the image. This isn't unique to PowerVS, it's simply good practice before capturing any production workload within PowerVS or any other environment. The output shown in the visual confirms that our CG61 VM is running a supported version of AIX 7.3. It also confirms that right now the VM is running on Power 9 hardware. Our intent is to migrate this VM to Power 10 hardware using the PowerVS VM capture feature. Once we have an image, we'll be able to then take this VM image and deploy it onto the Power 10 server using this capability. This is one of the ways of moving a VM in a supported fashion within the PowerVS environment and is highly recommended. Now let's capture the virtual machine. The capture process creates an image that can be deployed onto newer power infrastructure within PowerVS. We'll step through the wizard and explain the important options as we go. Most of the settings are straightforward, but it's worth taking a moment to choose meaningful names and descriptions so it's easy to identify the image later. The capture process is described in great detail in the support document. It can take several minutes for the capture process to complete. In a moment, we'll show you how to capture our newly migrated AIX 7.3 VM. To save time, we've skipped ahead during the capture process so you can quickly see how to start the activity and what to expect when it's finished. As always, I recommend that you refer to the support document so you can look at more details as we go along. This video is really just about showing you the important steps and some of the screens that you're likely to see during the capture process, and make sure that you understand what to expect throughout the entire activity. Okay, so we're going to capture CG61, which is our newly migrated system that's active. So this is running AIX 7.3 now. If we click on the VM, we can, in here, find the capture and export function under the VM Actions tab. So click on that and we're able to access the capture and export. Just keep in mind that this particular system, as we mentioned, is currently running on a Power 9 server, and we're going to be taking an image and putting that on Power 10. So click Capture and Export, and we put in a name for the image, VM Capture 1, select License Agreements, and click on Capture and Export to create the image. Once that's done, you won't see anything change in the VM panel. We need to go to Boot Images, and this is where the newly captured image will appear. And it can take several minutes for this to appear in this list, so we'll skip ahead so that it's easy for you to see what happens. You'll get a few pop-up messages saying that the capture is underway, and if you click the refresh button, eventually you'll see your new image appear in this list under Boot Images. And like I said, it can take a little while for this to appear. Eventually it will appear there and it'll sit in that queued state for a while, and eventually after several minutes it will go to an active state, which now means it's ready for deploy. Okay, so with the capture complete, we can now deploy a new virtual server from that image. This is where we select the new IBM Power hardware. In this case, we'll select the Power 10 server for the deployment. The remaining configuration is very similar to deploying any new PowerVS instance using the PowerVS UI. So for instance, we'll select our networking, our storage, SSH keys, the AIX image that we'd like to deploy, which is the one that we just created during the capture. Then we'll review the configuration through the PowerVS UI, and then launch the deployment. So that's absolutely no different to deploying any VM within the PowerVS environment. It's not unique. So essentially, because we now have this image in our boot catalog, we can deploy this image as many times as we like. But in our case, we'll just do it the once, because we are essentially going to deploy it and then hopefully retire the old AIX image later on. Okay, so let's deploy our new VM. We go to the Virtual Server Instance panel and select Create Instance, just like any new deployment of a VM within PowerVS. So in instance name, we need to type in a new VM name, so we're going to call it new VM, very original. Nothing else really to change here. We select our SSH key that we already have pre-configured, and then we need to select that we're going to install AIX. And this is where we can pick the name of the image that we just captured. So you can see VM1, capture 1 at the very top of the list there. So we select that one. And that is the complete image of the existing CG61 VM that we're now going to deploy onto new hardware. We can then select continue at this point, nothing else that we need to change here specifically. And this is the important piece. We're selecting a new type of server. So instead of selecting Power 9, which we're currently on, we're going to select Power 10. So here we're selecting an S1022 server. We can leave everything else the same and click on continue. We're not going to add any storage here. We're going to select public network so we can SSH directly to it once this is complete. And then we click on finish, select the license agreements, agree to those, and then click on create, just like we will with any VM within PowerVS. So this will take quite a while to run, so obviously we'll skip ahead in this process, but you can see here that after a few minutes the VM will appear. If we click on the refresh button, you'll get some pop-up messages as well when the VM has been deployed. You can see it's creating an instance, and now you can see it says building. So now that the VM is in a building state, we can simply sit back and wait for that new VM to become active. And as I said, after several minutes, eventually the VM will go into a warning state, and once it's completely up, you'll see it become active. We can see new VM is now active. And if we click on that VM, we can see some additional details about it. We can now see that this has been deployed from an image called VM Capture 1, and you can see it's running on Power 10, which is our desired end state for this VM. The virtual machine is now running. The first thing we can do is actually SSH into it and log in, and we can perform a few quick validation checks. First, we'll confirm that the operating system level is correct, which still should show 7.3. Then we can verify that the VM has been deployed to the new hardware type, which is Power 10 in this case. Then we can also check for any unexpected errors and confirm networking is okay. And finally, make sure that the application starts successfully. These are the kind of checks that we would recommend before considering the migration complete. The visual shows a couple of commands that can help with VM validation, such as OS level to check the version of AIX and the fix packs, printconf to look at the hardware configuration, lsdev to look at disks and adapters, error reports to look for hardware and software errors. These are just to name a few. There are plenty of others that can also be performed, so you should check the support document for additional details. In a moment, we'll log into the VM and perform some of these commands so that we can validate that the VM has been deployed successfully. Okay, so we can SSH into our newly deployed VM called new VM, and we can first check the OS level to make sure that it's correct, which it should be. So it's AIX 73TR4. We can start our application. So our legacy workload can start. It's our Java application, and we can see it's running perfectly on here. And now we can check to see what the hardware configuration is. Are we running on Power 10 as we had expected? So we run the lsconf or printconf command, and if we give it a second, it'll eventually come back and say yes. Yeah, we can see our application is running, and we're running AIX 73TR4, and we're running on Power 10. So that was the design end state for this VM. So essentially, the VM migration to new hardware is now complete. If you notice that your VM doesn't boot and it comes up with this particular error code shown here on the screen, which is in the support document, it could be that you've run into an issue where it's booted off the old AIX version on the Power 10 hardware, which won't work. This is sometimes what happens when you still have both disks assigned to the partition. So this F120 error can occur, and you may need to go in and reset the VM. So you can follow the steps in the support guide that will take you through what you need to do there. You essentially need to go into the SMS boot list and change the boot list here and select the correct disk. And the support guide takes you through that in great detail. So you simply select the AIX 7.3 disk and reboot the system, and it'll go back to normal. Then you just need to set the boot list within the partition itself from the AIX level, and the VM will boot successfully from then on out. The other issue that you may come across is the LPAR will boot up, but it won't have any network configured. This can sometimes happen, so you may find that your system comes up with localhost in the root prompt rather than the actual host name. You can follow the steps in the support guide again on how to configure the networking for the PowerVS environment, and once you've done that, everything should come back to normal. At this point, we've completed the migration process described in the support article. We upgraded an older AIX release using NIM we captured the migrated virtual machine and deployed it onto new hardware in the PowerVS environment. We then validated that everything was working as expected. I hope this two-part video has given you a practical understanding of the recommended approach for migrating AIX workloads running in IBM PowerVS environments. If you haven't already seen the first video, I encourage you to watch it first, as it covers preparing a new environment and migrating an older AIX release with NIM. Together with these two videos, they demonstrate the complete workflow described in the support article from upgrading the AIX OS to migrating to new hardware. Hopefully this has been useful and you'll be able to use this to migrate your workloads in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.